Take it there, who gon' take it there, who gon' take it there, who gon' take it there? Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air, you know what's in the air. It's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility, it's possibility.
So I want to talk about this guy, Chris Kluwe, I think I'm pronouncing his name right, who is an ex-NFL player who just got arrested in Orange County for civil disobedience. And he made a speech at this local council meeting, and then he engaged in some civil disobedience that led to him being arrested. And we'll go over all of that, and I'll show you the video as well, because the speech that he gave was really good. Dude articulated himself super well, and I think this is a great example of the type of civil disobedience that needs to continue to happen and needs to be escalated, and to have as much support behind it. The more people that engage in this type of thing at once as a unit, the better. And there's a few different aspects to that I want to talk about later. But first, let me just go ahead and play this guy's speech, or at least part of it, so you can get a feel for what it was that he said.
Hi, my name's Chris Kluwe, 15-year HB resident. I'm here to speak out against both the plaque and the current city council. As the community made clear at the Library Commission meeting last Tuesday, everyone is in favor of a plaque to celebrate the library, but the vast majority are against including a MAGA acrostic. Okay? Unfortunately, it's clear that this council does not listen, so instead I'm going to take my time to say what MAGA has stood for these past 3 weeks. MAGA stands for trying to erase trans people from existence. MAGA stands for resegregation and racism. MAGA stands for censorship and book bans. MAGA stands for firing air traffic controllers while planes are crashing. MAGA stands for firing the people overseeing our nuclear arsenal. MAGA stands for firing military veterans and those serving them at the VA, including canceling research on veteran suicide. MAGA stands for cutting funds to education, including for disabled children. MAGA is profoundly corrupt, unmistakably anti-democracy, and most importantly, MAGA is explicitly a Nazi movement. You may have replaced a swastika with a red hat. That is what it is. I will now engage in the time-honored American tradition of peaceful civil disobedience.
Get the heck. Get out. Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute recess.
And there you have it. So this council meeting was over a plaque that was going to be put up in the library that had a MAGA inscription on it. Some other type of acronym that spells out MAGA, and then a reference to making America great again. And another interesting thing was they wanted the text of the plaque to say something along the lines of, "Through hope and change, our nation has built back better to an era of making America great again." Which is interesting, because that seems to be referencing Obama and Biden and Trump. And I don't know, that's just odd. I guess that's their idea of making this somehow politically neutral, except I believe Make America Great Again is capitalized and the other slogans there were not. So just an odd choice, but really they just wanted to sort of memorialize MAGA on this plaque. And so what Chris Kluwe was doing was essentially making a stand, not only to say that this type of political message should not be the kind of thing that is inscribed on a library, a neutral public space, but also that the MAGA movement is morally reprehensible, politically reprehensible, comparable to Nazism, etc. And he states all this very clearly, very unapologetically. And I think that that's part of why it's resonating so much, aside from the fact that, that type of righteous action and the fact that it led to him being arrested is the kind of thing that gets people's attention. That's why you do stuff like that. And that's mostly what I want to talk about in regards to this. But also just his way of articulating himself. Clearly, he's thought about this a lot. Clearly, this is just a thoughtful guy in general. And he's trying to make the moral case against MAGA so abundantly clear that it cannot be mistaken, and his position on it cannot be mistaken. And I think that's the type of clarity that we need to make sure that we have going forward, because the goal of MAGA right now, and of the Trump administration, and what we're going to see from a lot of the government, is a normalization, not just of the idea of MAGA, of the idea of Donald Trump, but of the worst parts of the MAGA impulse and the Donald Trump movement, So things like the mass immigration deportations and mass firings of federal employees, stuff like that. There are going to be explicit attempts to normalize and perhaps even memorialize those types of policies for the sake of enshrining Donald Trump in American politics. And I think a lot of people see his reelection as either the green light to engage in that type of normalization of Trump politics, or a sign of inevitability, that we have no choice but to accept the normalcy of MAGA. And it's tempting to give in to that, because there's, a lot of political rhetoric out there that points in the direction that because Donald Trump won this recent election, because he won the popular vote, etc., that signals some kind of mandate, or that it's time for the left, be it Democrats to anyone who's on the actual left, to step back and allow the right, because Donald Trump won fair and square. And so what he wants to do with the government, anything he wants to do with the government, is legitimate. And anybody trying to oppose it is anti-America. And so the only way to respond to that type of farcical normalization of politics and a political approach that we know is not normal is this type of moral clarity that Chris Kluwe demonstrates in this local meeting. And to make no apologies about calling the MAGA movement what it is, anti-democratic, pro-Nazi, pro-fascist, making that case over and over again in unmistakable fashion is really important, because it's easy to feel demoralized against doing that. Like, we've been doing that this whole time. People don't believe it anymore, et cetera, et cetera. But the repetition of that message and continuing to remind people of that fact at any possible vertice of Trump's administration, whether it be the horrible things that he does or the horrible failures that occur from them trying to do anything at all. Those are the kind of things that we need to steadily remind people that this is not a normal form of politics that we are seeing. This is a fascistic form of politics that we are seeing, and that the people who've been calling attention to that this entire time are correct and always have been correct. And maintaining that type of moral clarity, even though it seems like the deck is stacked against us right now, is imperative. Because if you really look at the way America shakes out, Donald Trump did not win because of some kind of shift in the electorate in his favor. He won because of voter suppression. He won because of gerrymandering, and there are some economic factors to it. But overall, the amount of votes that Donald Trump won in this election did not change very much from the amount of votes that he won in the past two elections. What happened is that Democrats lost a lot of support because of their support for the war in Gaza, and there was a lot of voter suppression and mail-in votes and those type of ballots that were just completely thrown out. And so that's why Donald Trump won. So we are in a disbalanced democracy right now. We are experiencing minority rule. And so it's important for us not to allow consent to be manufactured for us, that the things that Donald Trump wants to do are democratically legitimate just because there's supposedly a cohort of the population that elected him. And so this type of moral clarity is what we need. We need to be able to articulate ourselves well, and we need to do it in these different environments, whether it be a city council meeting or different protests or different places in your locality or Washington, D.C., where you can go and make your voice heard or make a scene. And the way that he goes about sort of causing this kerfuffle here, getting himself arrested, is really important. The fact that he got himself arrested doing this, and that he knew walking out into the non-public area that way would get him arrested, and he did that very deliberately because he wanted them to arrest him. And those are the kinds of stunts that we need to pull. It's not enough to just make a statement, to just say what you think. Sometimes that's worth doing. But being able to make a scene is actually a huge part of spreading political messages and partaking in actual civil disobedience. And doing these types of speeches at local meetings, town halls, that sort of thing, that is a tactic that MAGA has utilized very effectively ever since Donald Trump hit the scene. And at first, it was not what they were doing. At first, there was not as much grassroots movement on the part of Donald Trump. You had a lot of very activated people in his constituency and his voter base that were engaging in various types of violence. They were making themselves known, being brash and obnoxious the way we know Trump voters to be. But as the Trump era has progressed, even into the Biden era, we saw a lot of active participation of MAGA people at city council meetings, PTO meetings, making a big stink about trans people, making a big stink about CRT, about DEI. Some of these things were staged. Some of these people were literally paid to go to these council meetings and make a big scene and make a big fiery speech, in many cases extremely bigoted, extremely hateful, and to try to push some of these public conversations in that direction. And it worked, both because they were able to put a decent amount of money into it, but also because they were successfully able to target certain pressure points of people's frustration and stoke those flames until they had an actual grassroots push in favor of removing transgender people from sports, or, removing CRT from college classrooms, whatever it was. And so this guy, Chris Kluwe, he was former NFL. He retired. I don't think he was ever like an all-star or anything, but he was a punter, and he retired because, according to him, there was a lack of opportunity because of his political advocacy. He advocated against homophobia. He has advocated in favor of trans people and against propaganda that denigrates trans people and gay people and that sort of thing. And that was how he kind of initially put himself at odds with the NFL, was by calling out homophobia, homophobic things that were said behind closed doors, and again, making a scene about it, causing a ruckus, and putting his own ass on the line to do so, risking his own career and putting his name behind it, putting his money where his mouth was, and using these important moments of wedge issues to really push the issue, get it in front of people, and ultimately apply pressure on these organizations to acknowledge some of this bigoted behavior that was going on behind closed doors. And so he engaged in that, and over time the NFL has pushed in a more progressive direction in a lot of ways. We'll see what happens. I suspect after the recent Kendrick Lamar performance, the NFL might slide backwards in the other direction. And I'm not speaking favorably about the organization itself, but more just the frontward-facing aspect of it. Ever since Colin Kaepernick, they, on a business level, have seemed to identify that they cannot be, openly racist, in the way that Colin Kaepernick inspired people to be. And so they've tried to strike a different tone ever since then. And guys like this, while lesser known, are part of the reason, because they're making these things known, they're making these conversations happen, and they're putting themselves in front of it. And that is what activists are supposed to do, especially a guy who has some name and face recognition. This is exactly what he should be doing with himself. Going in front of cameras, forcing the police to arrest him, speaking forcefully against MAGA, using moral clarity, not allowing these people to move the goalpost in terms of what type of politics we are accepting as normal and acceptable, but remaining in the position that MAGA politics is an unacceptable and hateful form of politics that is not to be compromised with. Maintaining that position strongly is a tough thing to do. It's certainly tough to do it in any kind of political context, given the political landscape at the moment. But having people like this guy willing to go out there and do that is good, because he's setting a flag post down. He's saying, this is where the conversation stands, as far as I'm concerned. And that allows other people to take that same position. And so people like him doing that is good for us and the discourse, because it allows us to get behind what he's saying and not be dragged to the right by the normalization that we are seeing from almost every other outlet. And it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse. It's going to become widely considered divisive and, unprofessional, un-American to call out MAGA politics in these terms. And especially if we allow the idea that MAGA is racist, Donald Trump is fascist, those type of things. The MAGA hats are equivalent to a swastika or a white hood. That type of stuff is the kind of stuff that if we don't continue saying it, if we let it go out of style, so to speak, to say those kind of things, then the right wing is going to gain ground. And the more crazy it's going to sound when you do say things like that. And so it's really important to maintain that message and to follow the lead of people like this who are speaking forcefully about it. And the other thing I want to point out about the way he did this was the calm deliberateness of it. And I think that really is the energy that we need to emulate, this sort of dutiful way that he just, now I'm going to engage in civil disobedience, and he just marches over there. He knew exactly what was going to happen, and he marched into it. He did not engage in any type of violence. In this context, the best way to push the line to the degree that he was trying to do so was to walk out there the way he did, and it was successful. His face is on camera. That speech that he made is getting more attention. I mean, this was a local meeting in California. It's really not that crazy, except for the fact that this is one of the few areas in Southern California that is a pretty conservative holdout. And there are obviously tons of non-conservative people there, but in terms of the gerrymandering and in terms of the leadership of Orange County and Huntington Beach, it's pretty conservative. And so that's what kind of creates the dynamic that we're seeing here, where this is a California guy speaking out forcefully against MAGA in California. But the fact that this local meeting and this speech that he made at a local meeting is getting national coverage is huge. That is the point of what he did. He did it extremely effectively, and other people need to follow suit. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, I'm reading One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest right now. I haven't seen the movie in a long time. I got to rewatch it once I'm done with the book. But the book's a little different from the movie, and I don't remember the movie that well. But in the book, you got this guy, McMurphy, who comes into the mental hospital, and he is not fully mentally deranged. He's really just trying to get out of going to prison. So that's the only reason he ends up in this mental hospital. And so he's trying to kind of con his way out, and he's trying to play his cards right. The whole book is kind of a metaphor for a poker game and also a metaphor for society. And the nurses who run this mental hospital kind of represent like the establishment forces that keep everybody in line, and they run everything like clockwork, keep everybody on a tight schedule and, you know, behaving properly. And so it's a metaphor for society. They have like a farcical democracy kind of thing going on and all that. And at one point, the nurse tells all of the patients that they're going to be punished because of a rebellious act that they all engaged in earlier at the leadership of McMurphy. So McMurphy is kind of in small ways leading rebellion against the nurses who run this hospital. And the big nurse comes and says, you guys are going to be punished for that, and we are going to take away some of your privileges. And I believe it was like the room that they play poker in or something like that. Just going to take away one of their recreational privileges. And so they say that, and then everybody kind of waits to see what McMurphy is going to do because he's the big troublemaker, right? And so he goes, he does a big sigh, and he slaps his hands on his knees, kind of in a put upon way, stands up, marches over to the glass window that the nurse sits behind, the glass window that she sort of watches everything through, you know, her control room. And he, in the words of the book, he just puts his hand through the glass. And what that means is that he shattered it, he broke it, right? And the glass shatters everywhere. But the book doesn't describe it that way. The book describes it as a very calm, he just walks over there and puts his hand through the glass. And then he almost says like, whoops, didn't see that there, didn't realize. And so what this was a show of strength, and it was a show of force, but it was not written like it's like he smashed the window with his fist, he roared a mighty roar, glass flew everywhere, the sound was unbelievable. It's not written like that. It's written as a very deliberate act, and he's doing it because he now knows that he has to. Because the way that the big nurse has played her cards and, you know, taking a privilege away from the patients, McMurphy knows that he has no choice but to display his power and show the fact that he's bigger than that, and that he's only playing by these rules because he agrees to, and that by doing things like taking away their privileges, they are threatening the game that everybody is playing. And I haven't even finished the book yet, but I thought that that was a really interesting scene, and it reminds me of what Chris Kluwe did at this meeting, because it's not some kind of huge enraged, he doesn't explode, the way he causes a scene is not by acting like an insane person and, you know, doing some kind of crazy stunt, even though if that's what you want to do, fine. But the value of what Chris Kluwe did here is that he comes off as not just like a normal, insane person, but as a dutiful and responsible citizen. He treats this protest that he does as a matter of course. This civil disobedience is a matter of course. He simply does it because he has to, because he knows it's what must be done. And so that, I think, is the lead that we should follow, not only because it comes off so much better, but by having that energy about it, by treating this type of disruption, this type of civil disobedience as a matter of course and as basically a civic responsibility, then that is going to create a much more consistent pattern of resistance. If more people simply take it as their duty to disrupt business as usual in this way and continue to do so despite the consequences, that is when the other side is going to become fatigued and eventually going to realize that they cannot eradicate the perspective that people are taking it as their duty to protest over. And that's the position that we want them to be in. Right now, we are in the position where they feel fully comfortable ignoring us. They feel that they have handily beat us in this election, and so that they can ignore the objections to Donald Trump and his politics for the next at least 2 years, more like 4 years. And so the more people take it as their duty to disrupt business as usual under these conditions, the quicker that facade that they are engaging in of having full and complete control with full and complete consent of the American people, that illusion will crumble faster the more people take it as their responsibility to calmly, deliberately, and diligently disrupt business as usual. If you like this video, please like and subscribe. And if you really want to support this channel, consider becoming a member. It's the best way to support this content. I'm going to also be posting all kinds of exclusive content, like exclusive podcasts, exclusive songs, beats. If you like the beats that play in the back of these podcasts, all that's going to be posted there. And if there's specific kinds of exclusive content that you would like to see as a member, let me know and we'll try some things out.